One of our group members conducted a survey, and one of the questions was, do you believe if electronic devices have affected our society? Here are some of the responses.
Yes, because less human interaction and face-to-face conversation leads to socially inept teens.
Yes, it puts more information in our hands and it makes it more accessible, but it's also a huge distractor. The thing that amazes me most is the jobs that have been created due to the increase in electronic devices and social media.
Yes, it low-key ruined the world.
Do you believe that technology has affected our society?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes, yes.
Video games teach hand-eye coordination, which is why I now have cat-like reflexes.
You don't understand me. You don't know my game. I see what's some malfunction.
Have you ever felt trapped in a digital world?
I see what's some malfunction. You say?
Or feel the need to escape.
And you get a tweet or a text and you get a little jolt of positive reward.
And scientists have even found that there's a release of a brain chemical called dopamine, a pleasure-producing chemical, whenever we seek or find new information.
Napoleon, don't be jealous that I've been chatting online with babes all day.
According to the infographic titled, How Students Are Learning with Technology in the Classroom, 98% of people ages 18 to 29 use the internet.
According to the same infographic, 75% of students acknowledge that bringing their laptops to class increased the amount of time they spend on activities unrelated to learning.
We've come very far in technology. At one time, the thought of a smartphone having the internet capabilities of a PC was ridiculous. The rate of technological advancement is exponential and will lead to great things. But there is a darker side. The wide variety of activities that a material household object can have can lead to a sharp decrease in social interaction, especially among the youth. This can lead to detrimental effects on numerous people and society as a whole.
Technology and digital arts have already made their way into our daily lives. Although there are numerous benefits of this infusion of technology into our lives, it has also led to aggression, distortion of reality, agoraphobia, decreased communication skills, and many other things.
Our first interview is with my mother, Courtney Reeves, the receptionist at Hahn Elementary. My mom has worked with kids about all of her life, so I trusted that she was a good person to interview for this.
Technology being used. The PACE class used technology to look at the brain, and they looked at models of the brain on the computer and then used a die-cast brain mold to make brains out of clay and mold it, shape it into a brain, and then they used the computer to pinpoint every part of the brain, and they painted them and colored them and brought the brain to life in like 4D.
So that's pretty cool. That's pretty positive impact technology is having on early learners.
Definitely. The art class uses, for the first time this year, they used a software called SketchUp, and each student sketched up their own imaginary city, and then they named like mayor and city manager, and they learned about how a city government functions, and while creating on the computer screen their own city. And then they printed those out, and it looked like an aerial view of these created cities that the kids made. And in the process of them designing, they also learned about each government function. So it was a really cool project. The City of Plano city manager came out and checked it out for himself, and maybe he pinpointed some kids that he'd hire someday for an internship.
So is that a pretty rare thing to use that kind of software, or is that something coming up more and more often?
I think that's coming up more and more often. I think it also depends on the teacher and how far, how confident she is of her students and of technology in general to branch out and let the kids try something that hasn't been done before.
So would you say teachers need to be familiar with the technology?
They need to be familiar with it, and they need to be comfortable learning as they go, because the kids learn really fast and they tend to teach the teachers a lot. Our teacher was amazed at how these kids had never seen SketchUp before, and within a week they were creating their own cities and they looked fantastic on paper.
So in terms of child development and brain development, where do you think humans and society are headed with these kind of impacts at such an early age?
Oh, I think it's just allowing people to get smarter. They are branching out. They're not just doing a pen and paper. They're using a whole world that can allow them to do things in 4D. But one interesting thing that we do see that other people have claimed they've never seen before is a student that we have that has diabetes. He has a insulin pump and a monitor that he uses like three times while he's at school each day. But he also has an app that runs on his phone, and the nurse has it on her computer in my office, and then his parents have it as well, and it tracks his blood sugar constantly. So we can all watch his blood sugar go up, have him come down to the office and test. We can watch his numbers if he's going down. We can save him from a crisis situation. So it's a really neat piece of technology, and when we've had a substitute nurse in there, she just can't get over that she can just sit there and watch the boy's blood sugar levels without having to wonder, oh, I wonder how he's doing, I wonder if he's okay, I need to test him in a little bit, because it's just right there on the screen. And anytime he starts going up quickly, an alarm sounds, and anytime he starts going down, which means he could pass out, it starts going down quickly, we have that technology right there, and that's a really neat thing. It's a medical app, but it's very handy in the schools, so, and especially for that boy. So,
as seen in the interview, we can see that technology does have a positive effect on children.
We interviewed Mr. Brooks, a psychology teacher at Plano Senior High School.
So your question about the effects of technology on the brain, or particularly maybe the teenage brain or the developing brain, there's definitely some research on that. But one thing that's been pointed out is they think the ancient Greeks had massive memories. Like they had the ability to, and not just the ancient Greeks, people in the ancient world, because they didn't have pens and pads of paper available to write things on so readily available. They certainly didn't have iPhones or things to sort of remember things and calendars like that. So they had to rely on mnemonic devices, a lot of things where they could remember vast amounts of information sometimes, supposedly. Like apparently some people could memorize whole like epics, like Homer, because they use certain mental techniques to be able to do that. And we've lost the ability supposedly to do that. The more and more technology we have to sort of help us remember, the more we have to rely on it. And so they think that, that's kind of become a crutch for us in a way. So I think there's that, effect of technology on the mind or the brain. So we're dependent on these devices. I'm trying to think of anything else.
Do you think that certain like video games and like whatnot can cause like aggression? Because there's cases of a specific case of the Columbine shooting where they played a specific video game called Doom, and they say there's a link between that and how they interacted with shootings.
Yeah, and I think the use of playing video games and then its effect on development and like whether it creates aggression or whatever. Well, there's several research on that. First of all, before we go forward with that, it's correlation does not mean causation. So just because two things are correlated doesn't mean one's directly causing the other. But the research shows that people who play like aggressive video games, it does promote more aggression somewhat afterwards. So it increases the likelihood that there's more aggressive activity. But it doesn't mean like a Columbine High style shooting spree necessarily. But it could contribute to it. A guy named Albert Bandura did a lot of research to really dispel the idea that had been around for a long time, which is that watching violence on stage or on screen or playing violent video games purged it. They call that catharsis theory, that it got it out of your system by watching it. And that idea is pretty much gone now since the 60s and 70s, and his research has come through on that. They find that that's crazy. Playing violent video games does increase aggression, but it doesn't necessarily make one violent. One thing, though, as far as brain neurology goes, the more you do something, the more it reinforces those neural connections. So if you're doing a lot of that while the brain is developing, it's really reinforcing those pathways through the brain, as opposed to doing other things like going outside and riding a bicycle a lot. If you're riding a bicycle a lot, you're reinforcing those neural pathways for that activity. Or if you're reading a lot, you're reinforcing those neural pathways. So it's kind of, when it comes to the developing brain, it's like use it or lose it. So you're building the brain, and the more you do some activity or think in certain ways, the more it reinforces those neurons, and the rest kind of prune away. So use it or lose it.
So would you say that it's a lot more difficult after you've created a dependency on technology to change those pathways, just like neurons, to something else?
It is. There's certain they call it critical periods for brain to develop, and those windows close as you get older, and it's hard to change those neurons later. They call that plasticity, or changing, or flexibility of the brain. That plasticity becomes more and more difficult as those age windows start to close for certain parts of the brain to develop. So it makes it a little difficult to, once one has become dependent on those. Which is not to say it's impossible. It's just that it's more difficult. All right. Thanks. You bet.
Next, we'll be hearing from Jeremy Deutsch, a Plano Senior High School alumni and graduate from the University of North Texas in psychology.
How would you describe the psychological changes to society related to technological advances?
I would say society polarizes a lot quicker. It seems like something gets out and people are immediately able to find other people who are in the same likeness as them, rather than being constantly dragged every which direction by their intimate peer group. Instead, you're getting fed things on Facebook which are prime for you, like Bernie supporters or Dollar Shave Club. It's just, you're very much sequestered from other people's ideas because you don't actively search them out on the internet.
So would you say that it's beneficial or more negative towards the communication age of today?
I would say that it's definitely beneficial. You can see how groups of people can have power just through the use of easy communication, but it's negative in terms of a lot of just hate and negativeness is spread through the internet, or just harmful things like porn is the driving force behind the internet. And, it just doesn't have a great long-term use or benefit.
Would you say that also contributes to the fact that more and more students are suffering from mental illnesses such as depression or anxiety or eating disorders, anything of that nature?
Yeah, I would say that a lot of that does definitely come along with technology. I think those things have always been prevalent, but they've been in smaller amounts and maybe even less severe, because these things kind of come from social isolation, and I think the internet just pretty much amplifies the effect of those kind of things, or at least technology, eating disorders are largely television and ads, which now most of the ads are through the internet. Depression is largely, isolation or lack of meaning, and I think you can get sucked up in the internet or get what you need, or get what you want, but not what you need through it. So definitely some crisscrossing effects.
Yeah. So what you're saying in essence is that it's beneficial to society in the fact that we can communicate faster and more efficiently, but it does have a negative effect on people, specifically the millennial generation, our age group.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at like the Arab Spring, that was totally because of social media. They were able to basically grab hold of their power as a group because they were able to unify in a safe, efficient, and free manner, rather than the whole country has to meet up in the city at the right time, the right place. You know, it's a lot easier to infiltrate, and this was like a grassroots movement. So they just basically were able to spread their passion, and they had an easy, free medium, which was Twitter or Facebook or something.
Right.
But then, you know, there's like other flip sides, which is I feel like nowadays the presidential candidates are largely an effect of the media and or, you know, just regular social media.
Or presidents in general too, like Obama's internet presence in comparison to Bush's internet presence is huge.
Mm-hmm. And how that translates, you know, too. He's like a Netflix show and TVs and movies and stuff like that.
So while we're on the subject of the millennial generation, do you find that being born in 1994, which is right in the middle of that time period, or that generation, would you say that there's a lot of negative connotation attached to the fact that you use technology much more in comparison to your parents? And do you think that people of older generations, like the baby boomers or other generations, I forgot the names of them, that they think that you should go back to the old-fashioned way of communication or of doing things, conducting business?
No, I think I've definitely seen that, like felt that kind of prejudice. It's kind of interesting to have seen that drop away in just like the last couple of years, or especially this year. Because like at work, just we're more dependent on technology, and it's not you're not some, you know, person taking selfies on your iPad. You're trying to take pictures of a construction site for someone else, and it's technology facilitates that. But in the past, like when I was working at my research job, you know, they would make fun of me for using my cell phone to call people rather than a landline. But it's kind of like, I have a phone in my hand, I have a phone on across the room. My phone has good quality, your phone buzzes, you know, they can call me back on my phone, type things like that. But, you know, it's, as I've gotten older, I felt like that prejudice has gone down because, and that prejudice now starts earlier and earlier because kids get cell phones earlier and earlier.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's no Game Boys anymore. It's just you go to a gathering and there's everybody with their iPhones, and then one kid has an iPad and he's king.
Yeah.
You know,
or he's no, go ahead.
you know, I wonder what millennials are now, or if there's still kids, you know, who use everything, because it's pretty much they're on the same technological level that I am. You know, we're all getting through it together now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the cutoff for our generation is 2000, so there are kids that are, I guess, under 15 that are even more inept than we are.
Yeah, they haven't made their name yet.
Yeah. But would you say that you've noticed older generations are starting to have a greater acceptance to the fact that, yeah, these kids are turning into such horrible people because of Facebook and cyberbullying, but I get to be in contact with my friends from high school that live across the country?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, truly. And like Amazon, product services like that, like, you know, I know Nina's mom, my girlfriend, just loves Amazon, orders things from it all the time. It's an easy service for someone running family, and that's just pure technology right there.
Yeah. Okay. So in what ways could you predict the long-term psychological changes on the newest psychological changes from the newest electronics that can bring upon society? If that made any sense.
I would say my prediction goes back to the polarization effect, which basically, as you know, things get quicker and people get more inept and have more of a niche that they're comfortable in. People on Tumblr are going to stay on Tumblr. People on Twitter are going to stay on Twitter. You know, and people on Instagram are going to stay on Instagram. And within those services, you know, there's even more subgroups that you're going to stay within.
Mm-hmm.
And your polarization is just going to like shift you more and more into one of those directions. You know, and I think we were talking earlier about presidential candidates. Like, that's how someone like Trump has been able to gather so much momentum, because he's like a very far right person, but the people within that are just, or he's not very far right, but he's very something.
He appears as far right.
People within his group basically ramp themselves up and grab the people who are kind of on the fence and then pull them over, and then those people who just got pulled over pull the people from the fence over. You know, it's definitely interesting to see how those things have affected on a widespread, because it's just basically facilitating people communicating with people. It's the Tower of Babel all over.
Right.
So yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Do you want to do like a quick introduction that we can use in our video? Like, hello, my name is Jeremy Deutsch. I'm a graduate of psychology. That good stuff. Just to make us
published psychologist.
Yeah, just give us some credibility here.
Okay, sir. Sure. Are you ready?
Yeah. That's going to be in our documentary.
All right. My name is Jeremy Deutsch. I'm Katie Deutsch's older brother, undergraduate of psychology, and published in a couple journals. So I live with someone studying psychology at the master's degree. No, kidding. Yes, sir.
You want to?
Yeah, I learned a lot through osmosis. I pretty much have a master's.
I'm kind of a big deal.
I'm kind of a big deal. All right. My name is Jeremy Deutsch. I am Katie Deutsch's older brother. I've just graduated from psychology, and I've been published a couple times. So she asked me on my thoughts.
Cool.
Hey, thanks for watching.
We hope you understood the documentary.
If not,
here's some statistics to back up our argument.
The amount of